Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. Billy Embody, certainly that. He joins on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Billy, how are you?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing quite well. Rarely is there a huge surprise in the recruiting scene. Generally, somebody's got a reasonable feel as to what's going on, but I did not see a lot of CJ Wiley to Florida State on the internets over the last few days, and that was his selection. Were you surprised at the four-star Georgia wide receiver?
You know, it's funny when we hear about recruiting surprises and how they come together, or maybe a backstory or something you were told before the commitment happens. Well, kind of on the eve of his recruitment, I was told, hey, Florida State made a pretty strong late run at CJ Wiley to kind of, try and sway things just a little bit more. And I don't think it's enough, but something to pay attention to at least. And so I had written that and at the same time said, most people don't think that he's going to end up at FSU, though. He's going to end up at Georgia, staying in state, or ending up at LSU, which had, really pushed hard for him over the last, month and a half, 2 months. And his dad and mom both went there, and there's all these connections. And meanwhile, Florida State had just buckled in and sealed the deal. Another thing, too, they had the last official visit this summer. So it really paid off for the Seminoles with the addition of CJ Wiley. So I was surprised, but at the same token, somebody who, at least I trust told me, hey, I heard there was a little bit of a late run. Not sure it's going to be enough, though. So kind of half surprised, I guess, right?
This is not exactly what I brought you on to talk about, but just kind of big picture. LSU fans very familiar with Florida State over the last 2 years. The Seminoles beating LSU to open both seasons. Do you think Mike Norvell's got that thing there to stay? Are they going to be a national threat for the years to come based on how they're recruiting and handling the transfer portal?
I think they're one of the blueprints in terms of how you've handled the portal top to bottom and balancing it with high school recruiting. And, Florida State, from what I see kind of as an outsider, not on that beat, they do some quality high school recruiting. They're in on some big names. And, at the same time, it doesn't seem like they're loading up with, 28 signees from the high school ranks because they want to save room for some of those portal targets. I mean, they beefed up their defensive line through that strategy over the last couple seasons. And, we've seen that up close following LSU's, games against them. And so I think they are one of the blueprints for how to attack the balance between the portal and the high school ranks. So, yeah, pretty high on Mike Norvell, and he's adapted really well to it with just his approach at FSU. And, I mean, CJ Wiley is another big-bodied receiver, so they had a little bit of a streak of those guys that they could kind of sell on how they wanted to use them too.
Certainly, Keon Coleman fit that bill very nicely over there in Tallahassee. We'll see what CJ Wiley can do. LSU now has to move on without CJ Wiley and kind of pick where their next guy comes from in this cycle. I know Khaleb Lockett and Jamie French are two guys that we've talked about a lot. It sounds like Lockett has maybe put a decision date in the near future. What can you tell us about his recruitment and what kind of player he is and what LSU's chances are there?
Yeah, Khaleb Lockett reminds me a little bit of Justin Jefferson in his body coming out of high school, his route running, and all of those things. I think he's probably somebody that needs a weight room for a year when he gets to the college level, and he does have a whole nother year, but he does have some strength that needs to be gained, both in his upper and lower body. So he could be somebody that maybe takes a minute to develop. But he's set a decision date for August, in early August, I believe. And I think this is one that could be kind of similar to how it's been throughout his recruitment. He's a flavor of the week kind of recruitment. We've seen LSU hold a ton of confidence, a ton of buzz around the Tigers. We've seen Texas been the early, flavor of the early recruitment, and then A&M maybe picked up a little bit of buzz. Alabama's entered the mix and gotten an official visit. Florida State's been heavily involved. It could go a number of different ways with his recruitment and his decision. I at this point probably too early to call in terms of what he actually does, But I can tell you it's something. It's going to be interesting because that's what his entire recruitment has been so far.
What about Jamie French?
Yeah, I think LSU did a nice job trying to sell him on the fact that he does have all sorts of family in Louisiana. He's got those ties to the region. I'll tell you what, as a sophomore, I thought Jamie French would have been a shoo-in to end up at LSU because of how high Cortez Hankton was on him and just those ties to Louisiana. But as his recruitment's developed, we saw him make an early commitment to Alabama. The coaching change led to him opening that up. And now it's been Alabama, LSU, and Miami, Texas, LSU, and Miami that have really emerged as the top schools in that recruitment. And it's tough for me to not see him ending up at Texas, which, if they don't end up getting Khaleb Lockett, will certainly mean that LSU is going to have to find somebody either as a late riser or somebody in Louisiana who can be a part of this receiver class. And then they're going to have to probably attack the transfer portal really hard because they're in a position where once you lose Kyron Lacey and who knows if somebody else goes pro or leaves, you're going to need more talent brought in through the transfer portal. And I think the receiver position is going to be one where they're going to have to address again if they don't feel like they really hit on some senior season type evaluations if they don't come away with like a Khaleb Lockett.
Are you surprised that I wouldn't say it's a struggle. I mean, they do have Teron Francis, and they've been in the mix for some really, really good players, and we'll see what happens over the next couple of months. But surprised that with Bryce Underwood in the boat that they haven't been able to pick off a couple more wide receivers?
I am a little surprised in a way. It's a position that is very flashy now with NIL, quite honestly, and it's a position group that at the same time you can go probably get somebody better, more proven, and established from the transfer portal, a la a Keon Coleman, than going out and trying to risk a receiver you might not be fully sold on. For example, like Khaleb Lockett, he's a 5-star wide receiver. He's probably going to command quite a number, especially when you look at the competition involved with him. And quite frankly, I don't know if that's a prudent thing to do, even if you have oodles of money and want to, reset the bar at wide receiver high school recruiting wise for yourself. I don't know if that's the right move. You can go out and find somebody who's, like I said, really proven and developed and maybe has 2 years, and they can step up and play with Bryce Underwood or Garrett Nussmeier in his second year as a starter. You can do all sorts of different things if you allocate funds the right way. And I think that's kind of the line to walk because receiver, like I said, it's becoming this flashy position in terms of NIL, and a lot of kids at that position, I don't want to say they're not in it for the right reasons because there are good coaching staffs that can recruit and try to balance all the different pitches and NIL and all of that. But there's also the reality that there are very few schools producing wide receivers right now at the level of an LSU, an Ohio State, programs like that. And so I think it's a tough position because if you don't necessarily want to break a bank on a wide receiver, it's really not a wise move to do that, unless you're trying to, again, add some real flash to a class and quite frankly overspend. So with Bryce Underwood being committed, it is surprising because you're like, oh, this is a shoo-in for a 5-star receiver to just say, all right, I'm going to play with Bryce Underwood for sure, and this is a good situation. We'll grow up together. But receivers are also wanting to play early, so they could come in and play with a whole nother, could be Garrett Nussmeier for a year or something. So it is an intriguing position, and it is kind of a struggle this cycle in a sense because, yes, they have Manchild committed in the class, but it's after the run that LSU's been on the last 5 years of producing receivers, and beyond that, of course, you'd think they'd be knocking down the door.
It's so interesting the way that we talk about recruiting has been completely changed in the last like 4 years with NIL, where you're talking about, well, you don't want to spend that money. Like we would never talk in salary cap terms 5-6 years ago, but here we are. I realize this is a big picture question and one that you can't nail down and answer exactly, but just a big picture, bear with me. LSU on the On3 rankings for the class of 2025 is ranked second right now behind Ohio State. Ohio State's got 20 commitments. LSU has 12. Behind LSU is Georgia, Bama, and Notre Dame. They've got 16, 19, and 21 commitments. And we know that Brian Kelly wants to build through high school. So it's not one of those deals where, yeah, I'll take 12, 13 high school kids, and then we'll go get 15, 20 kids out of the portal. That's not how he wants to do it. So before the season starts, where would you expect that number to be from 12? Closer to 20, closer to 12? I mean, just kind of your gut.
I think it's closer to 20.
Okay.
And just kind of off the top of my head, they're in strong position for a Zion Williams, who's a defensive tackle out of East Texas. They're in a strong position for Brandon Brown, a defensive lineman out of Miami, who is currently committed to Texas, unless he backed off, and I'm just having a complete blank there. But you also have Damian Shanklin, a four-star edge, who's set to announce his decision on July 5th. That would get them to 15 if they landed him. Who knows? Maybe there are some others that move decisions up, like a Jace Thomas out of Destrehan, who earned an offer from LSU. That would be 16 if they can keep him in state, which we expect them to at this point. And, then there are some other top targets that they have that could end up making decisions and maybe moving up their timelines or just kind of coming out of nowhere. If they knock a visit out, like at the Bayou Splash, for example, maybe they can make a move with somebody and get closer to that 20 mark. So I think 18 is a pretty good bet by the end of the summer that they sit at.
And you'll be there for all of it. We'll be following along over at the Bengal Tiger, part of the On3 Network. He is Billy Embody. We appreciate some time, man.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Billy Embody, part of On3. Look, you can find all the recruiting information your heart desires over there at the Bengal Tiger. I'm constantly impressed with the amount of content he and Shay are able to pump in on the recruiting side. There's been half a dozen updates, even just today, on recruits that I've been kind of checking in periodically. But quite honestly, I'm looking more so at the baseball transfer portal thread that's been updated a lot over the last couple of weeks. So go on and get your subscription and check those guys out. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.